Hi and welcome back. So this is our second lesson and we're going to look at how we can set ourselves up for success. In the first lesson we learned an introduction about what blended learning is. We identified how we define student success and we looked at various blended learning models, and now we're going to look at how we can incorporate the models into our classroom. So here's an overview of what we'll be covering today. The first thing is we're going to look at when we're planning to use a blended model. We don't always have to use it. There's times that you do want frontal teachings. There are times that you might want a whole group project working, and it's not always a blended model option. How do we choose the right model? And what are some of the tips that I have for you for classroom setup and for classroom routines? So before we begin, I want us to remember one thing as we go through this lesson today, and it's to have fun. Remember that this is not something that needs to cause you extra worry or stress. This is really a way for you to help use yet a new tool that will advance your craft as a teacher and will help student learning. So yeah, that was just something for us to keep in mind. It's one of my favorite videos, and I'm going to go, oops. So here it is. So blended learning, is there a formula? And no, there isn't. There isn't a specific formula that I'm going to tell you. If you do A and B, you will receive a perfect answer every time. But there is, you have to put in your own flair, and you're going to be able to use some of the tools that you probably already do for classroom management and just tweak it to make it fit with the blended model. So for example, we're going to begin by taking an example. Ask yourself, what is your goal? And again, remember, you begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to achieve in that lesson? What are you trying to achieve for the children to be successful at? Can a blended model help you achieve that goal? If your answer is yes, then you're going to be looking at which model is best suited for this outcome. And then you're going to look at what are tools or devices that you might need. So again, very straightforward and common sense. I'll give you an example, a personal example. So my goal was that the students will be able to use clear communication skills in Hebrew using the vocabulary words they already learned in class. And I chose to use a station rotation model, and the children were divided into four groups within the classroom. There was a group that worked independently on story writing in their journal. There was a group that received one-on-one time with my amazing co-teacher Etty, and together she helped children who needed extra support. There was a group that worked online on the iPads, learning in the lesson. And then there was a group that worked with peers, reading for one another, and working together, reading each other their stories that they created. So I'm going to show you an example. This is what one of my students created using EduCreations.
אבא ואמא ושלום וחיה יושבת בחגיגה סידור, והמורה ואריה יושב ויושבת בחגיגה הסידור.
So if you were able to hear it clearly, the student was reading something that she pre-wrote. That was her time work independently. When she completed the written assignment that she wrote using the communication vocabulary words that we learned in class, she then used an online tool to share it and to read it out loud. I find it very helpful in third language because it gives me the opportunity to then be able to, instead of checking one-on-one, are the children reading effectively, to really be able to take this with me and listen to it at a different time. It also allows me to use this during student parent-teacher conferences where I can show the parents, this is what your child was able to read. So there's a concrete explanation as to how she's able to connect the two letters to create a word, and the flow of the sentences, how fast she's able to read, and so on. So that's just one example, and that took place in the classroom during station rotation time. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, so now we're going to look at the classroom setup. And there are very basic rules, especially when you look at station rotation. You want the children and the students to have an easy time moving around. You don't want the class to be too noisy, so you don't want to have too much shuffling. You want to be able to support the various types of learning environment. So if if you have a round table, you can use that as a conference area at the corner of one room where you will be working one-on-one or in small groups. And you might have a row of desks in another area where you can put dividers where the students will need to work independently, and clustered of tables where you'd want the students to work collaboratively. You want to be able to keep in mind that you want to be flexible and adaptable. Not every lesson is going to look the same, and so the classroom shouldn't look the same either. The desks are not mounted to the ground, and we very often take the 2 to 4 minutes to move the class around. All I do is I say tachanot, which means stations, and the children know exactly how to set up the classroom. That happens on a regular basis. We'll also say Shabbat time, and the children know how to set up the classroom. So be open and flexible, that the classroom should be able to be shifted as needed. Now, another thing you need to look at is the students. How do you want to group them and divide the children? And that might vary based on their interests, based on their ability and their skill. What are you working on? Based on their learning style. There are times that I'll open up a station that is very kinesthetic, with plasticine, allowing the children to practice letter writing using plasticine and just practicing words that way. So keep in mind that you might want to group the children based on personalities, who works well together, and so on. So that's something you look at when you create the lesson. Another thing is, now we're going to look at class culture and routines. And when you look at that, and I'm sure this is not anything new, but it's just a good reminder. So you do want to be very specific with your what you're asking the children to do. So give them the steps of instructions. In a station, we'll be talking and discuss the volume level in the classroom. And you want to be consistent. So whatever you guys decided as the classroom rules and routine with your team, that has to be consistent. And be prepared. Be prepared that you're going to have some technological glitches, and that the iPad might not be working, and that the internet might be down, and that you might need a backup, and you might need to think on your feet. Again, with being specific, I also wanted to mention that you want to have the routines clear, as well as the routines of this is how you log into the app, this is how you'll open your laptop. When I say, it's called, for example, I was at a workshop and we said Pac-Man, which means put the laptops in a position like this. So you know they need to raise their heads and look at you. So have some lingo and have some words ready that you'll be using. So tips and tricks from my experience. So the first tip I can tell you is that you need to start baby steps. You need to take your time and do one little introduction. Then the next thing is come up with fun lingo. So I will say to the kids, for example, sheket bevakasha, and they all will say hey, and they sit in a listening position. And then I'll say sheket bevaka hey, and they'll say sha. And then we know we're ready to start. Test things first. Go on the apps. Go and practice it as if you were the student. What are the steps required? I take the time to do a lesson about the tool, the tech tool that they'll be using before we even start using it. So I'll take the time to open up the laptop, show them how to log into the tech tool, show them what they need to do. And the truth is that before you know it, they're faster than I am and they know better. But at least the basics I'll help to set them up. And just remember that the more you practice with children, take the time to practice it. Practice your expectations, and if they get it wrong, you're going to practice it again. So it's as simple as we'll be going now to our stations, and it's too noisy. We go back to the floor and we'll say we'll be going down now to our stations, and we try it again until I feel that they have gotten it to the level that is acceptable. So for additional learning, I'm a strong believer that you learn by sharing the information and teaching others. So my task for you today is for you to share what you learned, at least with one other person on staff with you, or it could even be a friend from outside of school or your spouse. I'd like you to share your thoughts on Classroom Board. And this is our today's meet. You can go to that link and we'll be able to see each other's comments. On this, again, I gave an overview because you guys are savvy teachers and you don't need details about classroom tricks or routines, but I would love to hear from you what's been working, what doesn't work. And then I have some videos on our playlist for this week that you can review. And again, as always, take the time to fill out a self-assessment, self-reflection form. It's for you to give some feedback, and I would love to hear from you. It helps navigate this classroom. That's it. Here are the references, and have a wonderful afternoon or day. Bye.